Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About Skills, baby. I am your host, Kelly Ryan Bailey. This week, we're joined by Fumbi Chima. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to do a quick introduction about Fumbi, so everyone knows who she is. With more than 25 years of leadership and technology experience in both the retail and financial sectors, Fumbi currently serves as BECU's Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer. As CIO of Washington's largest credit union, Fumbi is responsible for leading the organization's technology strategy, information security, and IT operations for its nearly 2,500 employees. She is also committed to ensuring BECU's more than 1.2 million members have secure, seamless access to their accounts online and in branch using leading edge technology. Prior to BECU, she served as CIO at Adidas in Germany, where she led a customer-centric digital transformation, creating and operating an agile digital foundation. Before joining Adidas, Fumbi served as CIO for several other global organizations, including Fox Network Group, Burberry, Walmart Asia's Business Operations, and American Express's Global Corporate Technologies. She is experienced leading digital and organizational transformations and driving business outcomes through the use of technology and digital solutions. And in addition to technology, Fumbi's background showcases a dedication to diversity, women's empowerment, and inclusion. She is experienced in building high-performing and diverse cultures in Fortune 500 and signature brands. In her previous role, she developed mentoring opportunities for women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Currently, she serves on the corporate boards for Africa Prudential and is it ASIC? I already forgot. AZAC, that's right. Thank you. And holds multiple advisory roles, including Aptio, and is on the board of Women at Risk International Foundation. Fumbi is also a sought-after speaker on topics ranging from the CIO's role in the executive suite to making digital part of an organization's culture. This is so fantastic. Even as I read through this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just so excited to dig into this conversation today, Fumbi. So thank you.
You know what? When you were reading it, it almost felt like you're speaking about somebody else. So I feel humbled that it's not just me, because I sit on a lot of people's shoulders. So I'm glad to be doing what I do because it's important work for especially young females. Yes. That they can reach the optimum if they still set their mind to it. So it's a privilege to be here this morning.
It's so true. And I share that same passion with you on, really lifting up young women and showing them what is possible in life. So there are multiple reasons. I'm sure that we will geek out over technology as well, but multiple reasons why I'm excited. So I got to list off these wonderful highlights of your life, but I'd love to learn more about the journey. What led you to where you are today?
That's an excellent question, because I think I'd say that my journey was accidental. I started as a kid with, a young girl whom, when I left, started as a liberal arts student, politics, philosophy, minor in economics. It was like, what the heck does I want to do with technology? And then accidentally fell my way into accountancy, and that was great. And I geeked over the technical aspect of accountancy, in whether it's standards or technical accounting and distressed companies and all that. So I think my affinity was always there, but I guess never really nurtured it or really knew. After spending many years as what I would now deem as a recovery accountant or an auditor. Actually, I wasn't an accountant, I was an auditor.
Recovery accountant.
Recovery. Yeah, I found it was like, why on earth did I get into that career? But it was one of those that I knew that when I graduated uni, there was several stipulations on my mother, because my mother was a widow, right? And not that it was just she brought up 6 children and very successfully in her career. And so I knew I couldn't go home and say, Mom, I'm just going to sit in my bum and do absolutely
Right.
nothing. It was almost like, you got to get a job or you're going to do a PhD. And I knew that was PhD was not the route I wanted to do. So back to the story of, yeah, ended up being an accountant and then going through and thinking, oh my God, if I keep doing this for the rest of my life, I end up being an old, boring woman. And so I needed something exciting in my life. And so I joined the distressed, like corporate recovery aspect of the business, which is basically helping companies, that are in distress, and using finances, financial acumen to help figure out how do we optimize, how do we minimize the write-offs? Well, what are the efficiencies we need to highlight and all that, which now people look at and say it's risk management. Right. And if you think about the correlation, to be able to help companies figure out how to best optimize them, or if they were in distress and they want to get out, you need data, right? And churning through data and then trying to extrapolate which data works with what accounting standards and how do you, take advantage of, those policies and all that. I ended up working with technology folks because data, database, IT, so extrapolating its process. And that was my fascination. I was like, wow, this is cool. And so I got more and more involved in that. And ironically, people ran away from that because it was very difficult, it was very technical on the finance side. I loved it. And so, so as I started to do more and more of that, I then discovered, it might just be best to move into that aspect of the consulting world. And so I took the leap and said, what the heck, you can. And I never looked back since then.
That's amazing.
It's been fascinating.
That is amazing. And it's, there's so many things that I hear as you describe this story, knowing when something doesn't fuel your fire and, the fearlessness of being able to sort of pivot and try something new and finding that passion. What was it about this sort of combination of data and finance that just lit you up?
I think, there's a part of complexity that I find intoxicating. It's like trying to unravel difficult challenges. I'll give you a classic example. And I think, if one of my team members is listening to this, you'd probably be laughing her head off. But I sat in a strategy session with my team the other day, and we were having difficult conversations because we're trying to do an org design principles, and I'm teaching them how to kind of really look at the organizations and just seeing, it was so complex, and I could see everybody's eyes going, on the Zoom call, like thinking, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. And the more they highlighted the difficulty and how complex it is, because new to an organization, the more I found it intoxicating. Now you could see my body like, oh my God, this is so fun. Come on, we got to solve this. And after the end, she's sending me a text going, Fumbi, you are crazy. And I'm like, no, this is fun. That's how my brain works. It's like, that's the piece of it that I'm sitting there thinking, I just want to solve difficult challenges. Who wants to do easy stuff? It's like, well, at least not me. That's what I find peace. Wow. And so I think it takes a certain kind of person.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's why, even if I look back and look at my career and what I have done, I've always been in companies that it's all like needs a rebuild. It needs re-looking at things. And it takes a certain kind of, personality and human to kind of go through it. And that's what I enjoy. I'm not one that you just keep giving me the same thing over and over again. That it's not going to enthuse me. It's not going to excite me. And what you want to get for someone like me is that excitement, because I put the passion. I put 60 hours a day. If that existed, I'm in it. I can live, breathe. I dream strategy, and on my bedside table in the morning, I then write it down. That's what tickles my fancy, as they say.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand because truly I I think so many of the same things. I mean, most things that people would turn away from, that just gets me excited. So what things for you, you know, really I'm trying to think, I tend to think of like what things inside of us make us be like that. Is that something you can learn? Is that just something you're born with?
I don't have an answer,
Yeah.
Kelly, because I think it'd be unfair to say, oh yeah, you can do X, Y, Z, and if you go and do step 8 B C D, you're going to get it. Um, I, I think it's probably things you've got to figure out what you like and what you don't, right? And that also equates to, you know, who you are as an individual, right?
Yeah.
And does that mean is that what you're born with? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that mean is that what you can learn? Maybe, but it's like when you exercise, the um, endorphins that come out of you
Mhm.
sometimes get people to want to do more, right? I
Yep.
mean, I was, when I play sports, and after a while, I could play sports for a long time after
Yeah.
I'd gotten the rush. But the
Yeah.
people that go, I just don't want to do it, right?
Yep.
And so I think I think it's what suits people.
Yeah.
But I think the fundamental, that probably needs to be driven here is once you find you,
Yes.
what makes you tick, what excites you, capitalize it.
Yep.
You know, I think many times we don't know what makes us tick,
Mhm.
right? And I think it's our self-awareness. And it's taken me a journey. It's taken me many, many, many years. And I'd say that I find, not that I just recently found it, but I'm more conscious
Yes.
of that. And it's about, that's the value that I bring, and I'm not shy of it.
It's exactly the same thing that I was thinking, those first words that you said, you need to find it. It's going back to what you said earlier. There's it's funny how you said there's no plan. There's no, and it really is. It's that idea of trying to find what just sets you on fire and
Mm.
makes you not want to stop doing it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think that's the piece. And I think most people we don't take advantage of it, right? We just kind of hide it under the cover because
Yeah,
sometimes a sense of fear, you know, um,
completely.
it's International Women's Month, right? So it's
Hmm.
not just International, it's Women's Month, right?
Yes.
And I've had the opportunity to kind of speak to a few women and all that. And one of the things that they ask is, oh, what's the advice you're going to give? Or actually, one of the questions was, if you look back, right, what are the things that you should have, if you had known, you'd have done better? And I think part
Hmm.
of it is, back into this conversation around, if you know what your drives you, then take advantage of it. It's being not being scared, right?
Yeah.
To say, here is what I want to do. Here's my aspiration. This is how I want to get, help me get that, seek that help. But it's the first realization. So the admission of, yes, this is what I want. This is who I want to be, right? Um, is important. And I think many times we shy away from that because it feels like, can you imagine if I was in my mid-20s and you and I had this conversation, or even in my mid-30s, um, and mid-career, and you say, and I say to you, oh, what drives me is, I like solving difficult problems and it excites me, and I get so excited about. In my head, I'll be like, they probably don't think I'm weird.
Yep.
I'm aggressive. I'm, you know, I-
Hmm.
I'm too driven. It
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with those things, but
Nope.
we ascribe them as being negative,
Hmm.
right? And so we don't say it.
Yep.
So we, kind of on. But if a opposite sex
Yes.
says it, wow, that person is brilliant.
Hmm.
Oh, I want that person on my team. What's wrong with it? All right. But I don't know whether the other side would think that we're driven. We put it in my head, like, I'm not going to say it because I'm just going to come as the aggressive woman. And then the complication is, oh God, she's not only aggressive, she's a Black woman. Like, like, and so you label yourself before you're actually labeled.
Right.
And so I think for us, it's about being confident and just going through it.
I so agree. It's, I've had so many of the same thoughts. This is just so fascinating to me that we've gone through some things, and it sounds like it, these fears. One of my favorite, I'm sure that it's a famous person that has said this quote. It's something about, courage is not in the absence of fear. It's sort of like running through the fear, because we all have it. And you described the story of, going into accounting and, that story of your mom, right? Because I think we've all had that at some point in our life. We thought, well, we have to do what we're supposed to do. And so we didn't really listen to almost ourselves to determine what is the thing that we just never even thought to go after, a thing that might make us happy. It's great how you said this. And I think just so many people will really resonate with this concept, and especially women. I think we're just so often told to not believe those things as we're going through our journey.
It's negative. It's negative. I'm driven. Okay, you're driven.
Yep.
But we've taken driven to be a negative. It's been, why are you being so masculine? Oh, what's wrong with being masculine?
Yep.
Right. And it's
and who said that anyway? Who said that it's masculine, right? I mean, who made that rule?
Exactly. And then the masculine is okay to be masculine.
Yeah.
So is it not okay to be feminine? Oh, then on the other side, if you're a masculine and you're feminine, it's like, oh, but he's got a passionate side of him. He's got a caring soul to him. I'm like, oh, so that's not negative.
Right.
Right. So, but I think it's all in our head, in all fairness. At times it's something that we have been preconditioned.
Yes. Yes. It's almost like we need to unlearn that and relearn that all of the thoughts in our head, whatever they are totally fine.
Yeah.
So
got a lot of learning. I'm still learning. I'm only 21, so.
Of course. Me too.
As I tell my 19-year-old daughter, I feel like, yeah, Mom, that was very funny.
I don't want to go back. It's funny because I think the same things with my daughter. I'm like, I don't want to go back. There's sometimes, you wish you knew what you know now back then. And I think we all hope that we can pass those along to our children, but it's, those learnings along, but there's only one way, and it's really to go through it and try and fail and keep trying. So for you, when you made this, sort of pivot in your life and you decided and you found that passion, did you feel like did you have to learn additional technical capabilities? Did you feel like there was something, or did you feel like what you brought to the table? Like, how did that sort of journey happen for you? That piece of the journey?
Yeah, I mean, I felt I had to relearn, right? And again, you go through what you know now, and if you'd known it then, would it have made a difference? Probably not. But yes, I did. I went back, and I, just because of my natural curiosity, right? And again, it's that mindset of I have to be better than everybody else, right? Because I have something to prove, which it's like,
of course,
what is it? And I couldn't tell you what that thing was, but I knew I had something to prove.
Yep.
And which is ironic, right? And so I felt like I had to learn. So I went to learn coding. I learned, logical architecture. I learned databases. I learned network, because I just felt, I took some of those certifications because it helped validate that I knew what I was doing. But I think when I look back now, because I don't want to sound too negative, like, oh gosh, she's a negative woman. But I think my plan at the time was, I want to learn this because I'm actually going to I lead people, and I want to be able to understand what they tell me that they are doing. So that, as a person, as that compassionate person, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we feel that we want to be able to drive that element of, okay, it's going to take 6 weeks to build that capability or that code. I may not understand the intricacies of the code, but I appreciate what it means and what are the building blocks to it.
Yeah.
So that made me wanting to learn more and be more curious. So that was really why I went back and I
Mm-hmm.
learned those skills. And I think it paid off because the value of able to speak the business language
Mm-hmm.
into technology. Here's what they are saying, because remember, technology and business folks don't get along. We speak in bits and bytes, and like, what does that mean? And we speak in acronyms, and I think
Oh,
sometimes we make it
so
complicated.
true. So
Yeah, we make
true.
it more complicated because we want those business people to look like, silly. So we just
Yeah.
use those big words. And so I'm able to translate,
Yeah.
right? And then I'm able to help translate the business back into technology and vice versa. And I think, getting those groups closer together was more important. And I think that's what I was, being able to do.
Yeah.
And then I think that's where I felt like the value comes in. And so yeah, so I had no regrets that I felt like I had to learn
Yeah.
more, and I still learn, right?
Of
Because
course. It's like a constant.
it's a constant thing, because you're inquisitive of, oh my God, new
Yeah.
technologies coming, what the
Well,
heck
it
does this
sounds
thing
like
called
you're
blockchain do?
constantly curious with every little
Yeah,
problem that comes your way. It's like, okay, well, what do we
yeah,
need to do, right? To solve this?
yeah. And I tell people, they always say, well, what do you think of innovation? I'm like, we're constantly innovating,
Yeah.
right? And because I ascribe innovation to natural curiosity. Innovation doesn't always come in to say, oh, this is the next big shiny object.
Right.
Innovation comes into just saying, how do you make things better? How do you
Mm-hmm.
refine it? Whether it's process, whether it's functionality, whether it's people, how do you refine it?
Yeah.
And that to me is that, that element. So yes, you're right. I'm constantly curious
Mm-hmm.
of trying to make things just that little bit better than it was
Mm-hmm.
before.
Mm-hmm. So, you described in that description of learning these technical skills so that you could bridge the, communication between the business and the technical people. How did you really beef up your abilities to, be that translator person, right? Because you're needing to understand the technical aspects, but you're also needing to understand the business aspects. Was that something that you learned naturally through your journey, or did you have to approach understanding from that perspective in a different way?
Um, I think it was through my journey. I mean,
Yeah.
having had a solid business background, being in finance, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that helped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I look everything from that standpoint. It helped because it could be determined, because, of course, from a finance perspective, you're always looking at costs, optimization element,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily sometimes big picture. I think I was also fortunate because of the kind of work I had done. It's really more, okay, how do you help recover? Which, when you're in the consulting world, yes, you help recover, but they're smart enough to say, okay, how do you help prevent?
Mm-hmm.
Which then leads into strategy, right?
Yep.
So now all of a sudden I'm like looking at things, coming in to look at it from a big picture, and then saying, okay, how do we build that big picture? But my lack of curiosity, having built so many big pictures, is almost like, okay, I want to actually build. I just don't want to draw the picture. I actually
Mm-hmm.
want to build it. And I think that piece of it then helps you kind of pave your way through.
Yeah. So how do you and I mean, you've had so many roles at fascinating organizations, how do you think through when you're looking for people to work with you on your team? What are the things that you look for?
Depends on, I think it depends on each one.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, I think in this day and age, we're always looking for leaders. First and foremost, it's all about leadership,
Yep.
right? The technical skills, yes, you can get it, gain it. You have teams underneath you that is able to, be that SME, because that's important. But you need leadership, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's the first thing that I look at. I look at people that have, that have different perspective to my approach. And I'm very much hey, I know, as I said, I've learned that I'm naturally curious. I think big picture, I'm that transformation disruptor in that piece.
Mhm.
But you can't have many disruptors in an organization, because then otherwise you're turning the organization sideways
Right.
constantly. So I need to kind of help balance, to have somebody that is the, process calm. So
Mhm.
it's the yin to my yang.
Yep.
Um, that kind of has that element. So basically, sometimes the opposite of
Okay.
my skills.
Yep.
Um, but at the same time, able to have fun and able to lead,
Mhm.
team people that are great with ambiguity, because the higher up you are in an organization, the more you kind of figure out how to, navigate through. So great relationship management. Of
Yeah.
course, having that technology astuteness would be wonderful. So at least
Mhm.
they're bringing lessons through, or experiences that they've learned in other places through, which is also usually quite exciting.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it just depends, right, on what the roles are, but just in the broad brush, leadership is paramount
Mhm.
into that. And then the specific skills, I think days everyone's thinking of digital. What does that mean?
Of course.
You know, and it does depend on what you're looking for. Is it head of product development? Okay, well, do they have those skills and those experiences? Have they done digital transformation before? What the approach have they taken? So have they done strategy before? So it's just, but that you can do. But if you're not a great leader, if you're not a team player,
Right.
um, and care about people development, how do you bring people up, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Mhm. That makes
So
sense.
yeah.
That does. Now, how do you, keep an eye on making sure that the people you like, I know in your bio, I noticed the helping young women, especially in the STEM world, which I love, but also keeping an eye on diversity. When you're before we move to young women, because I'd love to talk about that too. How do you keep an eye on when you're hiring that your team is diverse as well? How I don't know how you guys go about your hiring process.
I mean, I tend to ask these days. I whereas before it was just always like, okay, I assume. When I get information resumes now, I ask my team, okay, we have that diverse team. I
Mhm.
want to see women, people of color, gender, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
ethnicity. I want to see that in my slate. So I'm very specific, so they know, because I think at that level you're not, when you're entry level, um, you're usually applying directly, and there's an algorithm that will
Yeah.
just pass through, right?
Yeah.
And there's been studies to say some of those algorithms are male dominated.
Mhm.
They sieve out, they don't include diversity. That's possible. But at this level, you're usually doing a one-on-one, right? Or you're
Yeah.
doing executive search, or you're using
Okay.
your recruiting team.
Mhm.
So as you're looking at those candidates, as you're speaking to people, you can't tell me that you can't find people of diverse nature in there. Then that means
Yeah.
you're not working hard enough, right?
Yep.
So I'm very, very clear on, I do want to see a diverse piece, candidate slate first,
Yep.
and then I'll choose, right?
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if you give me a lot of people and the diverse candidates don't have the skills, then are you being lazy,
Mhm.
right? You're just gonna find me people just to check the box,
Right.
and that happens, right?
Mhm.
And it's you as an individual. So for me, it's like I don't always put the sole responsibility on the recruiting team.
Mhm.
I do my due diligence as well. So if they see you and they know that you are going to, push them hard, they will work hard. But if
Yeah.
they know you don't, then of course they won't.
Right. No, that's true. So do you mentor young girls, or do you work with organizations that help young girls get into STEM? How?
I work with young girls. I've done a lot of mentorship with young girls,
Mhm.
and a lot of people know that some of them just reach out to me and say, hey, I want to do this, and so I do. I work with them on those individual basis. I used to work with organizations, and then that kind of sizzled away just because primarily in the US I did that, but
Mhm.
um, it's I I think going forward it would be good to, because there's more focus now, and we know that that gap is really real.
Mhm.
I'd love to work with more organizations now around how do we continue to encourage, um, young girls, girls with code, all that
Yeah.
girl power, those organizations, and how to
Mhm.
engage our organizations to do more of that. It would be a focus because at some point you can only reach so much with my time. Um, but I think I can impact organizations
Yeah.
greatly if I work with them more closely.
Mhm. So for these organizations or any young girls, of course, young people that you may have come across, what besides, I'm assuming the first thing you might say to them is to find what they love, of course. but but besides that, what other suggestions do you make to them as they would be embarking upon their journey of life?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think finding what they love is always key, but is everything, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm blessed to have two children and both girls, and I always say no is not an option. I cannot is not an option
Mhm.
because you got to explore everything, right? And when you explore everything, then you know what you don't like, but you can't say I don't know when you don't know. I don't know I don't know what I like when you haven't explored anything,
Right.
right? And so that's always the piece. I think part of it is perseverance, right? I think sometimes we always or sometimes want to take the easy way out, right? There's that
Mhm.
element of, well, I should only do this for, I've done it 3 times. So I studied for an exam, right? I've studied twice, so I should ace it. Well, if you don't have the foundation, you're not going to ace it. And yeah, you can cram the subject, but all it happens with cramming is you regurgitate what you've learned. You don't have a level of understanding. And the professor decides to just twist the question.
Yep.
You can regurgitate everything, you haven't answered the question, right? So
Mhm.
it's about, spending that time to persevere, to really understand, right? The areas you're in. Ask for help, right? I say to people, that was one mistake that I didn't always do.
Mhm.
Now I ask for help, but before it was almost like, no, help is a sign of weakness. Ask
Yes.
for help.
Mhm.
um, Tell people what your what your aspirations are, so that people can find ways to help you, right?
Mhm.
So speak up, um, and also once you do it well, right?
Yeah.
Because again, back to that element of entitlement is like, oh well, if I don't get it now, well, it's because I'm X, or it's because I'm a woman, or it's because I'm black,
Mhm.
it's because I'm whatever. I didn't get that. Yeah, then an element of that comes in, but the reality is if you really are good and you prove it all right, you will stand up against all odds.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm not saying that the bias is not there. I'm not saying, but you got to do your best
Yeah.
first. That is number one, and then everything else follows through.
Yeah.
And so that'll be my advice. So it's like, okay, know what you're good at, seek help, don't be shy, right? Stay focused. persevere because it's hard work. It's
Yeah.
not easy.
Right.
Because you will still face the adversity, but if you know that in spite of that, this is what I just really want to do, then and it's not just, I mean, it's in anything
So
that
true.
you do.
It's so true. And I think we all have our own version of that, because I think almost anyone listening today can piece back in their history, when did they push forward even when maybe all the odds were against them, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you find your passion, that's the interesting thing. It's I mean, at least for me, and it sounds like for you, it's not probably what the world expected.
No, not at all. And I think, for most part of it, it would never be.
Yeah.
I think 2020 has changed things for all of us. In for some respect, for the better, right? And so let's I am always the person where the cup is half full
Yeah.
rather than half empty. Take the positive, run with it, and move on.
Yeah. What book do you recommend?
Oh God, I that's that's a good one. I have not been reading lately.
Busy,
Um,
I know.
I've been, yeah. There was I think the Billionaire book club was one that I shared with somebody um, a few weeks, about a month or two ago, and it's basically around how do you look at brand marketing and really look at it from that viewpoint, and how are entrepreneurs that there's 5 guys from Wharton, and they're serial entrepreneurs, right? Have they been successful? What the mindset of entrepreneurship comes
Mhm.
in, but that's really a lot more advanced, right? And that was one. I always tell people, especially when they are going through their career, there's always this "Who Moved My Cheese."
Yes, that's a good one.
It's such a basic book, but
Yep.
I go back to it every time
Yep.
because that is all about change.
Mhm.
And life is a constant change. And as you're progressing, just read that at least once
Yep.
a year to help you recalibrate.
Yeah. I just read The Gift by
Hmm.
Edith Egger. Um, have you heard of that book?
No, I have not.
It's
The
her,
Gift.
yep, it's her latest book. So she wrote another book. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's a psychologist. Um, it's the her first book is the story of, her time in a concentration camp. It's